This is the 91st episode of the Effective Executive podcast and YouTube channel. And I wanted to revisit something I haven't talked about in 15 months or so, and that is uh, what I reference often uh, are executive assumptions. And I've labeled this episode Executive Self Check Assumptions. Um, and it really originates from the Mark Twain quote that you saw at the beginning of this episode, which is, "It's not what you know that will hurt you, it's what you know that ain't so." Now, that's a variant of Mark Twain's original quote, but it stands true, and it is so important for executives to understand, um, especially as organizations grow in size. When you're 150 people, where you really start to get uh, complexity and bureaucracy and those types of things in organizations, you still can be relatively close because there aren't all the layers associated with your organization. But as organizations get larger and larger, what you see is a lot of assumptions about a whole slew of things. Everything from, well, if we're bigger, we're going to be better, because of economies of scale, but nobody accounts for diseconomies of scale, which plays out more often in large organizations than economies. Now, that reference more goes to manufacturing. The more parts that you make of something, the less expensive it is. Still relatively holds true, but that same thinking is often displayed in larger organizations and even in divisions about things like centralization, and the assumption is, oh well, they've got a call center, they have a call center, we'll merge them and then they'll all work together and all be one big happy family. And I have rarely found that to be the case. And the only reason I say rarely instead of never is because if you work on it enough, you can get it to where it works better. But it takes a lot of work. So assumptions, and I often hear from executives, well, I thought when I was making this decision that these things were true. Well, where did they come from? And oftentimes it comes from misinformation, or which is, kind of an accident, if you will, or a mistake. And then there's disinformation, where there's more nefarious things that may be going on, within an organization. And you know, knowing the difference isn't necessarily help you in as much as what you do, um, with the information that you're getting, and the existing assumptions that you already have in your head about things. I've seen, like I said, I've seen whole organizations take really bad assumptions into their decision making. Everybody thought that Ukraine would be wiped out within 30 days after the behemoth Russia attacked them, and that didn't happen. The reason it didn't happen was that the Ukraine military was more resourceful and actually, in some ways, better than the Russian army, despite their lack of uh, equipment and things of that sort. And you listen to some of the generals that had worked with the Ukrainians before, and they said, these are serious soldiers. These aren't, they know how to fight. They just need some of the equipment to be able to fight off the Russians. And right now we're, I think, entering day 100, or maybe this is the 100th day of fighting. And so I'm sure there's a lot of assumptions going on, maybe disinformation, misinformation in Russia about what kind of cakewalk this would be. But it hasn't turned out that way, and obviously a huge disaster for Russia, at least from my perspective. So, what are the barriers to good information? Well, you got to realize that people have agendas. That there's, if you're in Russia and you're a general, you probably don't want to be giving Vladimir Putin, bad or information that doesn't isn't shown in in a positive light. Oh yeah, we can beat these guys. It'll be easy. um, so there's agendas there. Sometimes there's misunderstandings, about things. And for executives, it's about reports that they get often. Oh well, we based our information off of these reports that we have, and this gets back to these large behemoth type organizations that tens of thousands of people, and even though they're split into divisions, there's many assumptions made at the executive level the further you get away from where actually the service or product is delivered. The more assumptions that are made about certain things, and have a tendency to brush broad strokes around things, and these broad strokes then become messes, and just well, they're just a big mess, and it costs millions, and sometimes tens of millions, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars I've seen wasted from assumptions that were not vetted by organizations. So what's the cure for assumptions? Well, it's pretty simple. It's seeing, it's listening at points of contact in your organization to understand, as I've mentioned in a previous episode, the data that you have, the information that you have coming in, because often what you're going to see is evidence that counters what you're being told, and for a variety of reasons. Humans are humans, and they make mistakes, and they have agendas, and some of the things that we talk about. The other thing that's missing more and more, I see, especially in American organizations, is critical thinking. Nobody challenges. They're afraid that they might be pegged into one of the ridiculous categories that we have now for people. Well, that he's that type of person, or she's that type of person, or whatever. And nobody, more people are afraid in larger organizations of using critical thinking skills and challenging thinking. It doesn't matter who they are, what group they represent. They need to be challenged on especially things that are going to affect an organization. So that was my message this week. It's relatively short, but I seen more assumptions just taken, and people run with them, and it's really causing, especially the larger organizations, some great difficulty and waste that I see in money. So that's what I wanted to cover in this episode. And remember, there is always a better way.